Right now I'm working as the product specialist for Propellerheads software. So, I do all the demonstrations, I run around Europe showing everything we have to offer. I also previously worked as a composer for video games, mainly. I did a lot of soundtracks, and I also do a lot of electronic music myself. So I'm really a musician first. And I've been working with Propellerheads since September 2011, so rather new.
How did you get into the whole music technology?
My whole family is very musical. My dad plays the trumpet, and my mother's an opera singer, and she plays the piano too, so I always kind of had the music around. But I think it was a reaction towards that opera classical thing that made me go into electronic more, electronic and rock in particular when I was younger. And then it just felt like the natural thing to keep going with. I took piano lessons, of course, but I really learned a lot about production too. I was in an old jazz studio for a long time in school, just learning how to deal with a mixing desk and that kind of stuff. So I've always been interested. But it kind of started with Reason, actually, when I wanted something on my computer that I could make music with. I already played the piano and guitar, but I wanted to actually make something complete. And then I actually got Reason 3, and that's when it just took off. I learned pretty much everything I know about music technology by just using the program.
How do you like to combine your musical knowledge with the electronic aspect of Reason in terms of just kind of technicality and style?
Well, for me, I think there is no clear line between electronic and instrumental. So I think everything that makes a sound is a sound. When I want to make music, I don't think about if it's a synth or a bass. I just think about the sound I want. I mean, just mixing the two worlds just brings out the best. Especially, that's why I like soundtracks so much, because a lot in soundtracks is just this kind of fusion. They're not bound to a genre. They just take what really fits. So, an electric bass with a synth line on top and some nice guitar and lush piano that has some crazy digital distortion. It's all one big musical package for me.
But in terms of soundtracks, one problem that I've encountered with writing to picture is that the sound is often kind of taking a back seat. I guess you're writing stuff for picture as well.
Yeah, primarily for video games, but it is kind of for picture.
So how do you overcome that problem? How do you make sure that sound gets what it deserves?
It depends on your outlook, I think. I don't think sound always needs to be in the front and center, especially in movies. Kind of the point of music is, in that context at least, give it an extra layer. Like, you can have an image that just can't say anything about the emotion, but then if you add the music, then it's very obvious what people are feeling. I find it even more interesting when you have something that looks to be a sad scene, and then you add some music that actually contradicts this, some kind of contrast. And I think it isn't a question of music being in the back, it's a question of people actively taking everything in, but vision always gets priority. And I think that's how the brain is wired. If you just listen closely, then I think the music has a bigger space than you might think.
But can you just quickly just tell us about the new features of Reasons, and how do you think that helps producers?
To me, this is a really big version, because we had Reason and Record, two separate programs, but now we actually fuse them together. So now, to me at least, Reason is finally a really complete piece of software. It was in Reason 4 too, because you could buy Record and have both, but now they're actually in one program, and I do play a bit of bass and guitar, so it's important for me to just how easy it is to record stuff in now in Reason 6. It's not about the new features. We did add 3 fantastic effect devices, one stereo tape style echo with a lot of tricks, Pulverizer, which is kind of a compressor and distortion, but also has a bunch of tips and tricks up its sleeve, and Alligator, which is a gate effect with filters. It's all kind of pieces of a whole. Everything you add something new to Reason, you kind of add 10 new things because of the way the wiring works, the way you can flip everything around and kind of connect anything anywhere. Even if you don't use the compressor and distortion from the Pulverizer, you might use a signal from the envelope follower to control something. It's that kind of modularity that makes every, however small addition, be a really big addition. And I think Reason 6 is just getting closer and closer to getting everything I want. Absolutely.
I've used Reason since early days, pretty much since it came out.
Yeah.
And I know the mixer was always a bit of an issue.
Right, the 14.2 mixer.
And they really made it look good.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about that?
The new mixer is just a giant leap forward if you're used to the old Reason mixer. First and foremost, it's infinitely expandable. The problem with the previous one is that you only had 14 channels, right? Then you had to create another mixer. But also just the EQ and compression on every single channel, the full control over insert and send effects. Having that way of working, seeing the entire channel strip, seeing everything as rotaries and not some kind of pop-up window somewhere. You actually see a channel strip. I think it allows you to work in a different way. There is a reason people still go back to analog studios and actually work with a real mixing desk, because it's a different kind of way of mixing. Because you see everything at once and you get to actually see what you're working with in a different way. You don't even have to use it all. I sometimes sometimes find myself only using the EQ section and faders, but it's really good to have there. You can never say you don't have enough mixer gear, right? Because you have pretty much everything that the big name studios have always kind of worked with. So to me, it's a giant leap, definitely.
You know, when you sample something into Reason, does it automatically get rid of the silence at the beginning?
Yes, actually it does.
That's actually major, because I haven't seen
giant.
that in any other program.
Yeah, it's really smart. It just takes the first kind of transient that is loud enough and just starts from there. So if you do live sampling, I usually set up a re-drum pattern first, right? So I have my drum pattern and then I start sampling stuff. The last thing you want is to actually go into the WAV file and start editing before you get results.
But that's what happens with all the software. The first thing you have to do.
Exactly, yeah. The first thing is not listening. The first thing is cutting and pasting and editing, and I'm not a fan of that.
How can we get to make music really quickly?
Yeah.
You know, just without actually fuffing about and cutting and preparing and, like you said, editing first and then listening later.
Technology is made to help, right? I mean, music technology is not made so you can mess around with technology. It's made for making music. That's the whole point of it. I mean, when computer recording first came, it was major because it allowed more people to easily do recording. At least it was kind of the thought behind it. Then what happened is a different story. But we're a music company first. We make stuff so you can make music. A lot of people see Reason, and you know, I flip the rack around and they see the cables and they get really scared. I mean, that's not the point of Reason. It's a beauty of Reason that you can get really deep. But the point of Reason is how easy and simple it is to make music. The music you want, not some kind of prefab music. How easy it is to get the tools you need and just how fast you can get started with what you really want to do, make music.
And also I really like Thor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a great synthesizer.
Me too.
Yeah, that guy's got a shirt. And could you just tell us a bit about Thor?
It's a semi-modular synthesizer. So it actually, instead of having a set signal path, you have 2 analog oscillators and they go here. Instead, you have 3 slots for oscillators and 6 different types. You have some really cool ones there. You have the standard analog style, of course. Phase modulation, which is a Casio kind of thing from old Casio synths. And that's something you don't really see. And the same with filters. You have 3 slots and you have 4 different types of filters in them. So you can really mix and match. But it really gets interesting once you get into what's called the mod matrix, where basically, like in Reason, you can take anything and put it anywhere. And what happens, that's what you want to listen to. If you modulate a filter with an oscillator, or if you send an LFO to pitch, it's that kind of stuff that makes it interesting. It's not interesting from a purely technical perspective, but just interesting because you can get so many different results with very little screen space if you want.
How can we play the plugin? They seem to be into playing parameters.
We're more musician-minded. You want to create, but you don't want it to be static. You want to be able to jump in and change stuff around. So when we did the Echo, the roll feature is something I really love. Just how simple it is to just move your mod wheel and then start making kind of repeat effects. It gets more of an instrument than an effect in that case. I don't think instruments are the only thing to care about, because effects can shape the sound much, much, much more. And if you have full control over effects in that way, that's just great. And Neptune especially, I think, it's both a technical achievement, just how easy it is to work and play harmonies or play the pitch. It's really inspiring to work with, first and foremost.
I heard your tracks. They're really good.
Thank you.
Could you tell us a bit about those and about your work with other people?
I tend to do quite a lot of different things. We have a bunch of demo songs every version. Artists we like and that we know use our software get in and make some cool tracks. We have a few really talented vocalists. A girl called Nora and a girl called Josefin Jinder that did some great tracks. And I just found their voices so inspiring, so I just did remixes. Right? So I took the voice tracks and then pretty much worked it all around. And I think remixing in general is a really creative thing to do, because you get to mold someone else's ideas.
I've noticed that there was a lot of really cool stuff, like good music coming out of Sweden.
In Sweden we have a really long-standing musical tradition. I actually studied music history and musicology at the university, so I know a bit. Of course, it started way back, what we generally call folk music. The interesting thing is we have a really good vocal tradition, something we call visa, which is kind of a song everyone can sing, and it has a lyrical text and it's supposed to sound very expressive. The singing tradition has really led to more artists coming here because they had singing in their youth. Same way, I think we have a lot of people wanting to start bands, and anyone starting a band will get into so many different types of genres and influences just because you're a bunch of people making music. It's just a kind of mishmash of influences that exists in Sweden is great.
In Sweden, in the winter, when does the night fall?
When doesn't it fall? It really depends on where in the country you are, but if you're up north, there is no light, right? If you're really high up north, the sun just won't go up. That's how easy it is. But on the other hand, in the summer, the sun won't go down.
Do you think that has to do with people kind of like staying in and being in studios and spending
I wouldn't
a long
actually
time on their tracks?
Yeah, it doesn't sound far-fetched, does it? And I think There is something generally known as the Swedish melancholy, and it's a term in music where a lot of the music coming out of Sweden is kind of melancholy. And someone, I think it was a US guy, a researcher, he actually thought it was because it was so dark that people actually easily got depressed, and they kind of expressed themselves with music, and the end result, ended up being really expressive and good. That might be a thought.
How is, let's say, Propellerheads' relationship with someone like Nord, Klavia?
Well, Nord is interesting because they're also a Swedish company. Some of our guys started at Nord. The three founders, Pelle, Marcus, and Ernst. Pelle, for example, he did part of the first Nord lead, and that's where he comes from.
I used to have Nord one.
Yeah, I love it. So, I mean, that tells us about a lot of his experience, and it tells us how small the world is in Sweden, right? Because if you're doing music software, you can't really go that many places. We're just 9 million people, right? Everyone is bound to kind of know everyone. Pelle most likely used what he had learned and developed there in our software at some point. Making a digital synth with DSP, you learn some tricks. I think that's interesting, actually. People don't respect what you do with the digital world in hardware, because when you have hardware, you have some limitations to work with, I think. And you learn how to optimize stuff, because you only have this smaller place to work with hardware. You just have like a dedicated thing, and it's not always an entire computer. Then you need to think about what you're doing, the decision. It's part of the reason why everything Pelle does is so extremely efficient. He learned how to work that way.
And he has to make their choices.
Exactly. He has to make choices because we don't release stuff always. We're quite long between releases. So what you do have to be really good, and you have to prioritize what actually goes in there.
Just tell us a bit about this new interface.
Balance is our first hardware product, actually, and I think it's a result of us using every single audio interface ever, because we've done software for so many years, and then just wanting to make something that actually fits us much better, that actually does what we want it to do. Actually, we take what we learned in software, I think, stability and workflow. It should be easy to use but produce great results, and then put it into hardware. Balance is a 2-in, 2-out interface. It sounds amazing. It's really hard to talk about sound, because for you to know that it sounds amazing, you need to try it with your track in your room with your speakers. It does sound really good. If you do a 2-in, 2-out audio interface, you need to make it sound good. It doesn't make sense otherwise. And we wanted to focus on quality. But we did some design decisions that are basically just about getting to making music. It's the same thought as with Reason. So for example, you can plug in 8 different inputs and then just click on the front panel to select what input you want to use. So you can actually leave everything plugged in and always be ready to record. All the rotaries you want to use, they're big and easy to get to. We have a feature when you use it with Reason that you can just click and get a really big input meter, which is all about quickly, getting to making music, seeing your level and tuning your instrument. It's perfect. And then some of the more kind of special thing we did was clip safe. I want to call it insurance or a safety net. Like if you're a line dancer, you want a safety net, but you're not going to fall. That's the whole point. But if you do, you have the safety net. And clip safe is the same thing. Still, set your levels correctly. But if you accidentally clip, if you have clip safe enabled, you can actually repair the clip. To me, just a brilliant feature, but something I hope I'll never ever use, because I'd rather set my levels properly. Balance it's interesting also because it's made with software in mind, right? So you actually get it with Reason Essentials, which is it's kind of Reason, but a bit cut down. Balance is kind of aimed at people who just you make your own music. You need quality, not quantity of features. You need everything to work and be stable and sound good, but you don't need to record a jazz orchestra, right?
Thank you very much for this interview.
Yeah, thank you.
And all the best with your work in Propellerheads and in your own studio.
Thank you.